Hey everybody, thanks for watching. I'm just working on some stuff with Gatsby source, GraphCMS. Basically, we're going to be working with the so we're going to be sorry, I'm having some audio issues here, some audio feedback. Hope that's still alright on the stream. Should be okay. Yeah, we're going to be working with Gatsby source GraphCMS. We're going to be adding localization, using localization from our GraphCMS project to essentially build product pages, localized product pages in both German and English. So at the moment, this is using the Gatsby source GraphQL plugin, but we want to switch this to the new Gatsby source GraphCMS source plugin, which we've recently added localization for. So yeah, I'm just going to kind of work through refactoring this this e-commerce starter that we have. Yeah, so this is the starter. Yeah, and as I said, it's using the Gatsby source GraphQL plugin currently, but we want to refactor it to use the Gatsby source GraphCMS source plugin, which is new, and there's some advantages to using this. For example, using MDX or downloading local images to use with Gatsby image. And yeah, as we've added locales to that as well. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of get started with that. So first I'm just going to add the source plugin just with yarn. Still using the next dist tag because it's not quite stable yet. So we've still got that under a dist tag. If you're installing that, just bear that in mind. That is still documented here. Yeah, please use your own risk. It's still in beta, and hopefully we'll get that out of beta sometime later this year. So that should be done installing now. Alright, so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and actually add that to our config. As you can see, I already have the source plugin for GraphQL configured here, so we can just essentially update this. The config object looks a lot different. We don't need these type names and field names. The type name is inherently provided by the source plugin now. Field name isn't required either because we're not schema stitching really anymore, so it's not a separate field. It's going to live inside of the Gatsby project schema. URL will remain, and obviously we need our token as well to actually run queries. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete those. Believe the actual key, the option key config is endpoint and token. So we'll just update to reflect. So we don't need to actually pass those headers in. The source plugin will take care of that. So obviously I already got our environment variables inside of the project. So what should happen now is if we to run this, we would actually use the new source plugin to build local Gatsby nodes that would then be available to us in our project to query. So that should happen. So do yarn dev. Whilst that building, I'm just going to go ahead and so you can see the Gatsby GraphQL toolkit, which is what the source plugin is built on top of, is actually fetching the schema, fetching the entries from GraphCMS and building those nodes that we need in Gatsby to query. So I'm expecting this to error because we haven't updated any of the actual queries inside the app yet. So they're still trying to run queries that essentially don't exist because we've removed that source GraphQL plugin. So it's basically those queries are just going to fail. So we'll need to update those. Yeah, but I'm just going to head and commit this. And we can actually remove the list dependency now because it's not used. Yeah, so if we just quickly look at our Gatsby node file, yeah, so we have this create pages API that Gatsby gives to us, and this essentially runs a build time to build pages from data for us. So essentially we're running this query here against our GraphCMS project schema. This is what needs updating to actually use the schema, the schema that's generated by Gatsby from this new source plugin. So yeah, we're running a query there to get some data, and then we're actually using this create page function here to actually build pages, product pages, category pages, and so on for each localization. So this is where it's going to get, essentially we're going to be providing an array of locales. We're going to be passing those to the query as a variable to actually be used against the CMS. So I will again add going to cheat here. Alright. So yeah, we'll remove the dependencies. We can add Gatsby config. Update. Nice. It's always good to commit early and often. So what you'll notice as well actually is in our Git status here, we've got some untracked files, and these are actually fragments pertaining to our GraphCMS project. So what the source plugin does is it actually generates GraphQL fragments that essentially mirror our GraphCMS schema. So for example, if we look at product here, yeah, so this is a product schema fragment on the product schema in GraphCMS, and what you'll see is, we've got a name field, prices, an image, relation, which is essentially related to this asset fragment as well. Same for collection. So these will all, essentially this is a fragment that is generated on build time, but essentially allows you to customize it. So you can add fields to this, or you can add a field that might have a specific field argument that you need to assign build time, because we can't do that in actual queries. We have to kind of add those fields to our fragments. So I'm not going to do anything with those just yet, but what we're going to do is we're just going to look at updating this. So now, unfortunately, because it's not building, I can't dive into the yeah, so normally what with Gatsby you get a GraphQL playground to explore the generated schema. Because the build's failing, I can't look at that right now. So but what happens is the nodes will be generated and they'll follow a specific kind of naming convention, like so. So we'll have all GraphCMS, and then that would be the model or the type. So in most cases it'll be all GraphCMS. In this case, all GraphCMS product, all GraphCMS collection, all GraphCMS category. It's always singular. So we'll just go ahead and update this query here. And that should get us some data returned, and then we can update this these functions to actually build the pages we need. So yeah, we don't need this nested CMS field, so we can just remove that. Yeah, and then what happens is this is going to become all GraphCMS category. And then, as with all Gatsby GraphQL nodes, they have the subfield of nodes, and you actually kind of move your actual fields inside of there. So that is essentially, yeah, I'll kind of do this alongside here, so you can see the difference. Yeah, so that's essentially the same query, just run against, this is run against the remote GraphCMS schema. This is run against the Gatsby schema, which has been built by our source plugin. So we need to use that now. And this last one here. Nice. Alright, yeah. So the difference, obviously, on the actual return data, when we're destructuring that, you know, this CMS key won't be there. So that should do that. And as well, these keys are different as well, but we can just go ahead and kind of give this field an alias. So this would be categories, and this would be collections, this would be products. Okay, so yeah, so this query is essentially going off, and it's going to get every single category for us. And what will happen is, because we haven't specified a locale or a localization here, it's just going to use the default for the project, which is English, so that's what we want. We're not that bothered about that at this point. Yeah, so alright, our project still will fail. I'm just gonna add this. Did Gatsby node query to use source plugin schema. Cool. Okay, so yeah, so further down this create pages function, we're kind of mapping over a locales array, and essentially this is just something, it's just exporting a JavaScript array, which has you know, essentially configuration for the localizations that we want in the project. So this is not specific to GraphCMS, this is not specific to Gatsby, this is just something, some way of storing some arbitrary data for the project that can be accessed in various functions and various parts of the application. So all we're doing here is essentially saying this is the path for this localization, the label, so when we're switching there's an actual label there, and a locale as well. I believe that's used for the INTL methods, like formatting dates, formatting prices and stuff like that. So yeah, we're just importing that here, we're mapping over that, and then we're saying for each locale we want to create these pages here. So what we're doing is we're essentially building a root page, which will map to our products template. If there's categories returned, we want to build categories, and we also want to build collections as well. So we'll break this down a bit further, and there's this build locale function here as well, which is essentially just going to build a path for our pages depending on the locale that's passed to it. Yeah, so obviously the locale is one of these objects. So it'll be ENDE and then the root path as well. And that's going to render this products page, which I'll open. Yeah. This is just a regular React component here. Oh, I've gone the wrong one. Products page, not product page. Okay. Yes, again, just a React component which Gatsby uses, but it has a page query here. This is important. This is something else we'll have to refactor. This is a query that's essentially fetching all of the product data for us for a particular locale, and that locale is passed as a GraphQL variable from context here in this create page function. So within create page there, we can essentially pass data which can be available as variables in this page query, and also available inside of your function as a prop. Yeah, so that's this function signature is pretty similar throughout. Obviously we're using different path depending on the page, on the type, obviously using a different template as well. What we're going to go ahead and do is we're actually just going to go ahead and refactor this page that we just looked at, update that query, that page query here to reflect the new schema inside of Gatsby. So we can start by getting rid of that field. And then this will become essentially all GraphCMS product. And then this is where it differs because again, Gatsby has a particular syntax for arguments, for filtering, for sorting data, for pagination, etc. So what I might need to do is actually get this project to build. And to do that, yeah, so what I might do is actually just cheat a bit and actually just kind of comment out these queries for now, just so we can get it to build, and then we can actually explore the schema in the graphical playground. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do just quickly. So you can see that's quite a long query there. We're just going to hide it for now, and this should build. This should then allow a build to pass. Okay. So yeah, it was essentially the build was complaining that the CMS field existed, and that's because we removed the source GraphQL config, so that didn't exist anymore and it was failing. So hopefully this should pass to the point where we can actually look at the schema. Yeah, it's still complaining about that there. And it's failed again. Yep, so I just need to comment that one out with header, I believe. Three errors, collections, categories not defined. Can I create CMS on type query? Alright, I'll just again gonna cheat and just kind of hide all this for the time being. Oh wow, the scroll, when your screen is magnified, the scroll is something else. Still failed. Okay, that's a pain. Let's see, grab time. So what I'm trying to do is get it so we can actually use the graphical playground for the project, and that'll give us a better idea of the schema that's been built by the source plugin. Hopefully this time. Create pages has failed. I believe that's not an issue though. We're expecting that. Let me just check. Alright, it is here. Great. Okay, so yeah, so we're in the graphical playground. And on the left here is our Explorer, and this lists out all the types available to us inside of our Gatsby project. So it's important to remember here that this is a combined schema for your entire Gatsby project, and you might be pulling data from various sources. So in particular, you can notice here that we have our GraphCMS schema. We also have a schema for Printful in this particular case. So there's two different sources, and obviously if you had a Gatsby project with multiple source plugins, you would have multiple types, and they all follow this kind of syntax, this naming syntax, where it's a particular scope, i.e. GraphCMS, and then the type. For multiple, if you're trying to fetch multiple entries, you'd be prefixed with all, whereas if you're just trying to get a singular entry, then you just use just the GraphCMS product, and that would expect some kind of argument, i.e. ID or a slug or something. But we're just going to go ahead and just remind myself what we're doing here. So we're looking at the products page, and what we're trying to figure out is what the schema or what the query what should look like for passing locales. So just uncomment this, and we'll have a look at the all GraphCMS type product and see what arguments that field expects, or what arguments that field can accept. So all GraphCMS product here, and as I said, these are all very similar now. They all have a very similar. Even the Printful one will be the same, and that's Gatsby's. That's how Gatsby builds its nodes and builds its own schema, internal schema. So all GraphCMS product here, and if we just have a look at this, we can do filter, we can do limit and skip, which is for pagination purposes, and also sort to sort the data by a particular field and an order. But we were interested in filter. What we can do is essentially, we've got all of these fields here for filtering purposes. We're interested in locale, and then another object, and then you can actually specify the kind of operator by which you're searching. So whether it's an array, you can pass it an array, whether that value is inside of the array or whether it's equal to a specific key, which is what we're going to do right now. This is really cool and graphical, so it builds the. We've got the options here from GraphCMS. This is what our GraphCMS project is actually set up to work with in terms of localizations. We've got English, German, Dutch, or Spanish, but we just want the English ones for now. So now that we've got our filter there, we have our nodes key, and then inside of there we can just do name. We've got our query there. For all our English products. Now what will happen is if I change this to DE, is that we will get different nodes back pertaining to the same product in GraphCMS, but just with a different localization. So if I do DE, and it didn't work. That's why. I know why. So the reason why that didn't work, and to come back to our source plugin, we actually need to pass a locales key to our Gatsby config options. So by default, it'll build nodes for the English language because that is the default for a GraphCMS project. But obviously, you can add multiple there depending on your GraphCMS plan. In this particular project, we have 3. Could have more, could have less, but you need to specify them in your config. So we're going to go ahead and do that quickly. Yep, so inside of here, just want to add a locales key. What we want is an array of strings. And these strings are essentially, they map to values inside of the GraphCMS project for the locales on your project. So let's commit that. Typo. Okay, so I think I might need to rebuild so actually get the nodes, the new nodes for the German localization. Gonna have to rebuild. So it's important to remember that if you are working with multiple localizations, that you'll have to specify the locales you want so that the source plugin can actually go off and fetch that data and it knows the query for that at build time. Just go ahead and refresh this, see if it's built. Okay, so it's built now. Yeah, so you can see German products here, obviously different spelling, different names for the products. That's expected. So what we can do is we can actually just say DE products, give this field an alias, and then copy that exact same query. But say en products en. So you'll notice that there. Yeah. What's interesting, the way to actually figure out that they are the same is by looking at the remote ID. Okay, so we've got a lot here. So what I'll do is I'll actually just pass in limit expected end. So just want the first one. It should hopefully be the same one for each locale. Should be. Yeah. So you can see that the remote ID for each node in Gatsby is the same, and that's the ID that correlates to the product inside of GraphCMS. But what will happen is if we actually look at our local ID field, and that's important to remember that they are separate, is that it's got a different suffix at the end here pertaining to the localization it belongs to. So it's prefixed with the type, it's got the remote GraphCMS ID in the middle there, and then it's got a suffixed localization type on the end. So that remote field, that's something that the source plugin adds. And that's true to GraphCMS, that's a true matter of GraphCMS, whereas the ID is localized and specific to the GraphCMS schema. So it's important to remember that if you're working with this. But yeah, now we know how to actually filter by a specific locale, so we can go back into our project. And inside of here now, yeah, so we're passing a we're expecting our variable from our context inside of create pages. Yep, so we're passing a locales key inside of context, which is this variable here. It's a type of GraphCMS locale. I'm pretty sure that's available. Yep. So that should be this. That should be the same. Where am I at? Except what we actually want to do is we actually want to, we don't need an array in this case, because if we look at our query, we're not passing, we don't have an array, we just have a single key, and that's the, yeah, so that'll be the case here, I believe, as well, a locale path. Yeah, right, okay. So yeah, we need to just update this query now. So if we remember, it's filter, and then it's local, and then it's EQ, and then it's the local variable. So it's filter, local, EQ. Right. Just need to add some more nesting there. And of course we need the nodes key there. Excellent. So this should actually build now. That query should run now. And obviously we need to update the other queries inside of our project to also reflect that. And that's going to essentially return this product to us. So again, remove this CMS key because that's not a part of the schema anymore. So yeah, just going to go ahead and do that. How's this feeling? Categories for each is not a function. So this is inside a Gatsby node. Sorry, inside a create pages. Categories for each. Alright, yeah, so there's another thing we'll have to update. Yeah, so obviously when we're querying this, categories is not the array anymore. This is just an object. Inside of there, the nodes will be the array. So we can't obviously use the for each on an object. We need it on an array, so we have to add nodes here. And the same for collections. And the same for products. I can't believe I missed that before. So that should hopefully actually build now. Yeah, nice. Let's see where this error, the origin of this error is. I keep seeing it. But our Gatsby create pages function didn't fail anymore. So we might actually have a built page or a built project. Success. So there's probably going to be some data missing. Yeah, right, so we're on EN here. But what we've actually done is yeah, so this is a 404. This page does not exist. However, these pages do exist. So need to look at that, but we're just going to concern ourselves with product pages right now. So you can see they've built right here. That's great. Yeah, I need to figure this out on the product page. Product page, products page. Where is products page? What's the path for products page? Products page. Why is there nothing on that? I think I know why. Yeah, so again, this is the same. This is the another issue relating to adding the nested nodes key for the query, and obviously that's reflected in the return data. But essentially, we're passing in products to our grid here, which will, yeah. So we're mapping over that. Obviously, we need to pass nodes. Maybe not. Products. I'm just going to log this out. Right, we're on the right page here. Products page, create pages. Interesting. So for some reason that page is completely void of anything useful. Why is that? Products. Locale. Just get rid of this. I think that if statement's tripping up. What have we done? What have we done here? Build the locale path. Alright, so we're just gonna move on to something else while I figure out what is going on there. So we'll actually just look at the individual products page for now, rather than the index products page. So we go to product page. Again, yeah, so this query will need updating. So we'll just uncomment that, and we can focus on actually updating it to reflect the new schema. So again, it's accepting or expects two variables this time. So it's expecting the locales variable, and then it's expecting a ID variable, because this is we're requesting a singular product. So we need an ID to request that singular product rather than an array of products. So yeah, if we look at mapping over this here. You'll notice that we are passing in context the ID and the locale path, which is fantastic. So just get rid of this CMS field. And then this will become not all GraphCMS product, just GraphCMS product. Notice that the C is it's camel case, the GraphCMS, but the MS are lowercase. And let me just refresh my memory on the single on the arguments for a single product. Alright, yeah. So with the regular GraphCMS schema, there is this where key as an argument, and you would pass that, and then you pass the ID and say where this ID equals this. Gatsby's different, and it's just ID EQ ID. So that's what it looks like. So we just need to update this. And then obviously our locales has to be a filter as well. Pretty sure it's locale. Yeah. Filter, locale, EQ, locale. Excellent. Obviously, actually we don't need the nodes key on this one because, as I said, it's a single, we're expecting a single entry returned, an object rather than an array, so we don't need the nodes key side of this query. You can see something in the terminal complaining here about variable type. Yeah, variable ID of type ID using position expecting type string. So we just need to update the variable type assignment inside of this query, which is this here. So that's obviously different. Another difference between that. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll just ignore this for now. And that I know what argument filter on. Yeah. So the filter, yeah, that's right. So the filter does not exist. Again, we're just saying where locale equals locales. Yeah. Oops. And one more thing. So we'll come back to this. I'm just going to kind of mute this for now. I'm just going to comment that out. And we'll come back to why that's actually an issue in a second. Let's just get this page building. It's one other thing that we'll need to do. We'll need to remove this CMS key again because it's not part of the schema anymore. So you can see the project is building, generating the image thumbnails there to use with Gatsby image. Alright. Product page. Definitely just remove the CMS. Yeah. Yeah, so it's essentially saying product doesn't exist, and that's because it's GraphCMS product, so we should just assign this an alias that is so. What page is this on? Templates product page, line 16. Very properly product if I can find it. I've removed the CMS though. It's not even there anymore. This is weird. Data, product. I'm just going to go ahead and... This is one thing with Gatsby is sometimes the cache kind of gets in the way a bit. I think it's a lot better than it used to be, but sometimes it's a pain working with. Cache just kind of has to be removed, but then you have to end up fetching everything again from the remote sources to build these local nodes. But yeah, this is strange. I don't understand that error, because it's not even an actual reflection of our code, because we removed that from there. So, I don't know. Let's see. I think we need to kind of make this singular as well. Variable, it's just a single locale. It's not locales, it's not multiple. So that'll be best named as a singular variable. So we'll probably come to that, just to be, semantics and all that. Looks better when it's a single type. Can't see any major complaints. Alright, cool. So it's building now, it's complaining about reviews. Should have some better defensive programming here. Oh, where's that? So what we'll say is if I say product reviews. Hey, excellent. So I wonder if this will switch. Yeah, so it's going to trim up. Probably printful product of null. Printful product of null. Interesting. Alright. Yeah, so we've obviously got this local ID string in the path, and we want to use the remote string, so it's not polluted with the type name and the localization. So what we'll have to do is go back to our create pages function and look at where this is used. Products for each ID. Create page. So what we actually want to do is just say the remote ID and alias that to ID. We could just use remote ID there, but then we would have to update we'd have to change this here, this key here, then the variable would be different. So I'm just going to assign this an alias like so. We'll have to rebuild to reflect those changes. Yeah, so this is obviously there's a lot of fiddly changes here to bring this kind of up to date with the schema. The source plugin, sorry, for the schema change. So there's a lot of fiddly kind of changes, which is part and parcel of programming, I think, really, especially in this day and age. So probably just going to crack on with this a little bit longer, then we'll take a break and maybe come back to it this afternoon. But we should. Right, so because we've changed this path page for the path, we should now be able to just alright, print full product. Okay, so this is what I think would be a problem. I wasn't sure. Let me just check this through. So essentially what we're doing inside of this create resolvers function, which is another Gatsby API, this is allowing us to actually extend the schema and the types of our internal Gatsby project, or our internal Gatsby GraphQL project. And what I'm doing here, or what this project is doing here in this particular case, is it's creating a new field on this GraphCMS product type called printful product, and it's actually looking up printful product type from another source plugin, which is where our printful was coming from, and using a key, printful product ID key, to look that up. So for some reason that is undefined or is null, so we need to figure that out. It should be interesting because I'm not sure why that is the problem. Probably printful product of null. Or was that just saying that the product doesn't exist? Ah, I get why. Right, yeah, this is why. So because I'm actually I'm actually fetching I'm actually querying for the remote ID from our Gatsby schema, and I've aliased that field to ID. This key, this ID key that's returned from this query, we're using in this loop here. And I'm passing it as a variable. It's using the path, which is fine. This is what we need it for, but it's passed as a variable here. And then inside of our page query, I'm using that variable against the type ID. So it's saying look for a product where this ID matches this ID. The issue there is that this ID won't match any ID. It'll actually match a remote ID. I think that's the problem. String position type ID. So this is where, like I was saying, there's a lot of kind of tripwire around this, refactoring this, because the scheme has changed quite a bit for the better. In the long run, it's better because we get the nice stuff of Gatsby image by using the source plugin. We get to use MDX from rich text fields in GraphCMS. But just this refactoring process is a little more painstaking than I'd kind of hoped, to be honest. Alright, we're back now. Yeah, and we've got the locale switch in there. So you can see the path update and the page updates. We've got the German description here, English description. Everything updates, so that's nice. So that's a pretty good place to break, I think. I might come back to this a bit later, I might do a bit more tomorrow, but yeah, thanks for watching. If you get any questions about any of this, you can get at me on Twitter or via GraphCMS. Yeah, so hopefully see you next time. Thanks.